Hello, I'm Matt and welcome to Badger Workshop. I'm sick of not having a coffee table, so I thought it was about time I made one. I used to live next to a builder who used to restore old timber framed houses, so I've got loads of offcuts of oak and I thought they'd be nice to use. Unfortunately, I've used all the good bits, so what I've got left either isn't big enough or is so thick that I've got no machine that would actually be able to resaw it. But what he'd also given me is a load of pine bits of timber as well, and they are big enough. Not as sexy as the oak, but they will work. And that's going to use up a big pile of stuff in the garage, creating more space. First I took them to the planer. Now you normally joint two faces. Do the third in the thicknesser, and then normally I do the fourth on the table saw. But this is far too thick to cut on the table saw, so I actually jointed three sides, and I thicknessed the fourth, and any discrepancy really won't be a problem on this table. I probably could have made the cut going from two sides on the table saw, but it wouldn't leave the nicest edge, and I want it nice to be able to glue it together. These are all different lengths, and they're far too thick to be able to cut on the miter saw or the table saw. But the newly restored jet bandsaw did a nice job. Obviously the bandsaw doesn't leave the most perfect cut, but after some sanding it's going to be fine, and this is definitely going to go for a rustic look. These are all going to get attached together just with glue. I don't feel the need for any other fixings. There's such a huge surface area, this is going to be more than strong enough. But to help with getting everything nice and aligned and keeping it all flat, I'm going to glue it up in sections. I'm making this table out of 5 blocks of this pine, but I'm going to glue it up in 2 sections, a section of 2 pieces and a section of 3 pieces. And this will just give me a little more time to play around and get everything level. You can see with the rings as well, I've laid all the boards out so they alternate the direction of the rings. I left those 2 overnight to dry, and then the next day I could get the 2 sections glued together. I recently bought these Wolfcraft clamps for another project, and I'm glad I had, because without them I would have had nowhere near enough clamps to be able to clamp this up. If you're interested in them, there's a link down below to my Amazon page with all the tools I use. They're all clamped up. Again, I left it overnight to dry, and then the next day the clamps can come off, and I did a lot of sanding, moving my way up through the grits. So to make the legs, I've got this little scrap of 5mm thick, 80mm wide and 3 meter long steel. I just want to cut it exactly in half. So I pulled the Evolution saw out of the garage to do this, and this was definitely the thickest bit of material I've ever done with it, but it cut through it with no problems whatsoever. I want the legs to be recessed into the side of the table, so I mark out where I want them to go. The steel's 5mm thick, so I just mark out on the top 5mm, and then I can join up those marks and I can see what needs to be removed. So that the sides have nice crisp lines, I just use a Japanese pull saw to cut down to my line, and then I can take the router and remove the bulk of the material. At the top of each leg I want to put a couple of bolts, or coach screws, that's what they're called, through the legs into the table. So I mark out and punch where I want the holes to go. Then I just take a pilot drill and drill through those marks before coming back with an 8mm drill bit to widen the holes. before I went any further, I got a flap disc and cleaned the steel up. Unfortunately, it was a horrible stormy day, so I had to do this in the workshop, which makes quite a bit of a mess. I then just got a random orbital sander just to clean it up some more, and this helped remove most of the marks. I'd measured the width of my table, then subtracted that number from the bit of steel and worked out what was left over, and then divided that onto both sides. Then I could look at bending it. Before ordering the steel, I checked the instructions on this and it said it could bend up to 5mm thick. But this was my first time bending anything this thick, and this was much harder than I imagined. The time I'd got to my fourth bend, I'd worked out, well, after stripping most layers off, that I could get my foot up on the bench, push backwards on the bench while I pulled it. But while doing the first one, there might have been quite a lot of straining and swearing. Still, next time I go to do it, I'm sure it'll be a lot easier. So the next day, there was a gap in the showers, and I could get these wired onto my sawhorses, because I want to get a protective coat of lacquer on them. I managed to get 3 coats of lacquer on, but I kept having to stop and bring them in the house to dry between showers. So definitely another reason I need to get the garage sorted out, so I have somewhere to work inside. I finished the tabletop in some hard wax oil. This is some Tretex medium oak. Very easy to apply. The only problem with this stuff is, especially in the workshop where it's not so warm, it does take a good day to dry. When it had dried, I brought it over to the house to finish assembly, as I didn't fancy having to carry it fully assembled. I know the carpet's hideous. It's on my list of jobs to do, is lay some laminate flooring. So the legs go on, pretty much no problem, just slide into place. Then I can lift the table up onto its side, so that I can get a couple of pilot holes drilled through the top of each leg into the table. I can then get a coach screw into each hole and just tighten down with a ratchet. And that is it all done. Now I've got somewhere to put my tea, maybe beer, maybe whiskey, and even I can put my feet up. So that's it all done. My first project for the house that isn't decorating. Thanks for watching, thanks to my Patreons, and please subscribe for more videos.